Hi. So it's story time with Tony and Mel. And I've decided to call. Um, sorry, distractions. It's a long story. Um,
Today is March 8th, 2025.
Today is March 8th, and I've decided to call today Life Day in honor of. I'll tell you later. Um, because it was 1 year ago today that I did not die of a heart attack. Um, some of you know the story. Some of you know probably some of you know parts of the story. Some of you probably know very little. So we just thought we'd record it and share it. Um, yeah, so I'm like, I was literally there for this whole entire thing. I remember very little of it. Um, Dr. Melanie's going to be going to be telling a lot of the story because she was there for like the whole.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yep.
1 year ago and several hours ago, just after midnight Thursday night, so Friday morning. I think I had just kind of we were both in bed, asleep. It was after midnight. Um, I think I'd kind of like just drifted off to sleep, and maybe it was like kind of asleep and then kind of awake and whatever, and like something doesn't feel right. Woke up enough to notice that something doesn't feel right. Like it's just like heartburn, right in the center, like heartburn times 100. Like laying there, I'm like, no, something's not right. I don't think this is heartburn. This is a lot. But hey, Melanie, wake up. You take me to the ER.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you remember?
I remember I like rolled over and it seemed like you were waiting for me to just move at all. And immediately it was like, Mel. And then you said, I'm not feeling well. Can you check me?
Okay.
And I was like waking up and I was like, I don't know what I can do to check you. What can I do? And so um, I woke myself up and then I went and I like checked your forehead because I figured like that's what you were expecting me to do. And it felt clammy.
No.
And then uh you were I don't know what you were just saying, I'm just not feeling good, whatever. You said the words chest pain at some point. So then I said, okay, are we doing ambulance or are we going to the ER?
Like, I'm awake now.
Yes. And he said, take me to the ER, which is words that Tony Crawford doesn't say. Um, and so I threw on some normal pants. I was in my jammies. I threw on some pants and shoes, and you changed quickly.
Yeah. I just
We got into the car.
put on whatever pants were laying there, whatever shoes I'd worn yesterday. Just yeah. I think that was a record time for me.
Yeah.
I think in 5 minutes we were
out the door, and the cat I think was confused because we were sleeping.
Was she on the bed?
I think so.
Remember.
Yeah, she usually was. Anyway, so we got on the road and we were zipping through Arvada at 1:45 a.m. So I ran a bunch of red lights, which wasn't a big risk at that time of night in Arvada.
But she's very rule follower. Melanie was very aware of that.
Yeah.
I don't think they were red, but I think everyone we hit was yellow. It was like, yeah.
No, I ran some reds.
Okay.
Especially the one at like 64th and Sims. I was just like,
and that was like a left turn.
We're gonna get there, yeah. So we got to the ER,
which was not that far.
Yeah, it's on 58th, and so I dropped him off at the door, and parked my car just a little bit. By the time I got in behind him, a minute later, they'd already thrown some aspirin down your throat.
Oh. What I remember is you go to into the 24-hour walk-in clinic ER, and there's just a little waiting room and a window, and they open the window, and what's your name? I'm like, chest pains. I'm having chest pains. They are pretty severe. I'm like, well, what's your name? What's your social security number? What's your address? What's a good phone number? Like, did I mention the chest pains? It was like 1,000 questions. And I remember at one point, I'm just like, I'm leaning my head against that window pillar as there's more questions. Like, can I go in yet? Can you just buzz the door? Did I mention the chest pains? And it felt like forever. I'm sure it wasn't that long, and I'm sure she was hurrying, but it felt like forever. I don't remember the aspirin, but at least not until I was like into a room. But then I remember, Melanie came in while I'm still. What I remember is you came in while I was still answering the 1,000 questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we were at this just freestanding emergency room for so we got there a little before 1, quarter to 1, I guess. And so they were doing all kinds of tests and they were checking on what he was feeling and that kind of thing. And they did like a CT scan for you.
That wasn't immediate.
Yeah, so they started doing all the blood tests that they do for heart attacks, and then
Yeah, I think the baby aspirin or whatever aspirin. You're like, I'm in the room, I'm in the hospital bed, and probably take the shirt off. I don't know if I was wearing the gown, but it was in there, and they're checking me out. And there's, fortunately, there wasn't like a 10-car accident had gotten in ahead of me, so they had personnel to help and blood draw and.
Yep, IV, I think.
I don't remember.
Anyway, they were doing what they do in emergency rooms, and
there was another kid in there at the time. I never saw him, but like a 10-year-old kid, maybe younger.
And like whooping cough.
He had whooping cough, and I remember at some point like that sounds bad. Like he's just on the other part, some other room. Like I'm having a heart attack, but I feel sorry for that kid because it just sounded so bad. And I think one of the nurses said whooping cough or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then
and you didn't know you were having a heart attack yet.
Oh, okay.
But you knew you were in pain.
Yeah, I knew something was up.
Yeah, nobody said heart attack yet. So there was some tests and whatever, and at some point then they were like, yeah, we're not going to send you home with these chest pains. We want to put you at a place that has, in a hospital that has a bed. We're in Arvada. The closest bed they could find was Highlands Ranch. So,
which, if you're not familiar, we're like the far northwest suburb. Highlands Ranch is a far southeast suburb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
And so they were like, well, we're going to take him in an ambulance to the hospital, and you can follow in the car. They're talking about.
So I was going to go back.
Oh, okay.
So the parts that I remember, which is not much.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I don't know if they wanted to check for. I don't know. I don't remember why, but they said we're going to send you in for a CT scan, which they had in that they couldn't do a lot of stuff, but they had a CT scan. Yeah, the contrast that whatever they inject in my veins does my.
I wasn't sure if you wanted to tell that part of the story, but I'm happy to tell it.
Okay. Yeah, my body does not like that.
No.
I think
did not react well to that.
I think I got through the CT scan, which is I don't know. Did they do my heart and my brain? I don't know if they're checking for a stroke. I really don't remember. I think they said something like I'm starting to get fuzzy and pass out or weak, or maybe they gave me drugs. I think they said something about like some people don't react well to the contrast, the iodonic, whatever the word is for iodine contrast.
Yeah.
Like okay, whatever. Do I have a choice? Probably not. And I remember going into the room and whatever. I don't really remember the machine. I think before I went in, they may have like handed me the vomit bag, the blue bag that holds itself open. Yeah, that was the vomiting was the reaction to the contrast. Apparently, I got done with whatever scan, and then I didn't think I had anything in my stomach at that point, but stuff was coming out violently.
Well, and I was in the room where he had been laying in the bed. They took him out, so I'm sitting there just waiting for him to come back, and I hear. I'm hearing the vomiting, and I'm looking at the nurse who's like right across the hallway, and she's at the desk. She hears the vomiting as well. I know that it's Tony vomiting. She's confused. She thinks it's the kid with whooping cough. And is just confused about where the sound is coming from.
Because like the kid's over there, but the sound is coming from here. But it sounds like whooping cough or something very strong and loud and violent.
Yeah, it was
it was me.
It was a unique sound. Yes.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah. But I knew I'd heard it before, so I knew.
I'm sorry.
I knew it was you. It's okay. Anyway, so after that, they said, and I don't remember what they saw in the CT scan, but essentially they said we're going to send him to a hospital. Sent him to Highlands Ranch.
And the little bit ambulance that I remember is like they checked with a bunch of hospitals, and there wasn't a single bed. And maybe it was like not a single bed in cardiac, but like there was one bed in the far south hospital in the same system.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, so they took him in an ambulance. I followed behind. It was this ambulance trip was between 4:30 and 5:30 in the morning. It was snowing. It was like, I don't know. It was not not good. The roads were icy. The snow was coming down, and the ambulance drivers weren't bothered by that. So they went pretty
full
good
speed limit.
clip. Yeah. So I was not feeling good about that, and I was like, two of us are not going to be in the hospital today. So I went
Slower.
as fast as I could, but it was slower. So I got to the Highlands Ranch Hospital. Do you remember anything about the ambulance ride?
I remember them wheeling me out of the building into the ambulance, and your car was like on the same side where the ambulance was at.
Mm-hmm.
And their license plate says doctor on it and says, "Oh, is your," I forget exactly what they were. "Is your wife or doctor?" And I managed to get out a coherent sentence, even though I don't remember a whole lot. I like pause and put the sentence together. Like, she has a doctorate degree, but it's not in medicine. And the ambulance EMT or ambulance transfer, I don't know what the title was. It was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay. And I'm like, my feet are freezing. Can you cover them up? Because we're in a big old ambulance in the blizzard, and that's all I remember.
Yeah.
Until the next thing I remember was honestly during surgery.
Yeah. So, I got to Highlands Ranch a few minutes after the ambulance. I found a parking spot, whatever. Went into the ER, and they brought me through security. Someone came out to get me. They were looking for me or something, and so they pulled me into where Tony was in a room. And while I was coming in, they were doing continued blood tests on him, and they were checking the enzymes, which, if anyone's familiar with heart attacks, there's an enzyme that's like a lagging indicator of a heart attack that comes out. It manifests after the heart attack has been happening.
Like when the heart muscle is under stress, it produces a unique enzyme. So not other muscles don't produce that exact enzyme, so they can test for that, and they know that okay, your heart is under unusual strain, like not just working hard exercising, but it's got an issue, it's got a problem.
Mm-hmm. So I was in this new room in Highlands Ranch with Tony, and we were just talking about what was happening, and I had all of his clothes from the other place. I don't know, personal items. Anyway.
Was I conscious for this?
Yeah.
Oh, I
we were talking. And then all of a sudden, like 9 people like rushed into the room and started like they flatten the bed. You see it on ER. They like flatten the bed and the person goes straight back. And they started prepping him to go into a procedure. So they were like rolling him down the hallway. I'm grabbing all the bags of stuff. And I'm like, what do I do? Where do I go? And I followed the bed. I was trying hard to keep up because they were running you quickly.
Wow.
And then we got to this area, waiting room area, and they were like, stay here. And then I watched them like take you through those doors, and then I was in the waiting room.
And I think I have a tiny, vague, foggy memory that fits in about here, of a nurse saying something like, the first choice for the surgery. So it was put in a stent. The heart rhythm was fine, the valves are fine, but the arteries were pretty clogged. Probably still are. But so they're like, well, the first choice is to go through your wrist and do arterial. What is it called? I'm gonna call it arthroscopic because I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. The first choice is to go through your wrist and to your heart and do the surgery. Second choice is through your groin. So they're like, I regularly remember the nurse saying, "I'm going to shave you in case we I need to go through the groin," and then I feel like a razor, and that's all I remember.
Okay.
I only have a few memories. I'm going to stick them in here.
Yeah. And so I was in the waiting room, and essentially they were like, I don't know if I remember that if I fully knew you were going into like surgery. Like, so they went in, they wanted to put the stent in.
In the heart muscle.
So yeah. And so I was waiting. I couldn't sleep. I, was just stressed. And 3 or 4 hours later, I saw your mom wandering the waiting room. It was a big waiting room area, and it was like different sections of walls and stuff. And so it was hard to see across the whole thing. And so she was walking around, and I was like, "Oh, your mom is here."
So you
So,
must have called him because I didn't call him.
Cadix might have.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't.
I forget now what.
I may have. Did I text that anybody from the first?
Yeah, I think maybe from the ER.
Okay.
Maybe. Anyway, and so, but usually a procedure that involves putting in a stent is like 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours. And Tony was in for 6.5 hours.
So 90 minutes come, 90 minutes go. Mel's in the waiting room.
Yeah.
2 hours come and go. Mel's in the waiting room.
Mm-hmm.
3 hours, hours while you're in the waiting room.
They did call me. Someone who was in the procedure like stepped out to call me to say that they were needing to take an extra step because his heart was not pumping efficiently at all, and so they had to put an external pump in there to keep it moving.
So the heart part was done. They put in 2 stents. One was 12 millimeters. One was much longer. So the heart part was done. That's the heart surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I was told, because of the vendors and whatever, like only certain, if you get a Acme stent, only Acme certified doctors, once you've been trained by that manufacturer of the stent, can put in that stent. When that part was done, 2 stents, but like she said, the heart just wasn't pumping enough fluid, so they put in an external pump, like in my groin, in the leg, the whatever artery that is in your leg.
Femoral artery.
Femoral artery. Same place they went in for the surgery. They've already got a hole there, so they put in a pump, which I saw later. Maybe, well, if this helps, like a windshield washer pump on your car, if you've ever replaced one of those. It's about that size. A cylinder, a little bigger than this, big around, kind of short. I saw it briefly after they took it out. But I guess that doctor was a doctor certified for that brand of pump, wasn't on site and probably wasn't awake yet. So I think a lot of the time it was just waiting for that second surgeon to arrive and install the pump in my leg. I do have one memory during surgery of all the times when I didn't think I would have a memory. Like while they're doing stuff inside my heart. I remember laying on my back, like it felt like very flat, like a cold metal table, and off to the side of me was like a big TV screen with a black and white image, and I'm like, oh, I could see something like a little curly thing. I don't know what that was, the end of the tube that goes through your veins. I could see it kind of like making a rhythmic flicker. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then I think I figured it out, and then I came back and I'm looking at, maybe I heard him, I don't know, for some reason I knew that I was getting a stent. I don't remember them saying, but like I looked down and like, oh, there's a surgeon down there doing surgeon things, and I said, how many stents am I getting? I don't know how I knew I was getting a stent, but and he says, we'll talk later. And then he probably gave the anesthesiologist a dirty look, and that's how, then I was out again.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Yeah. So after 6.5 hours, for some reason, I don't remember how this happened, but I was connected with the chaplain at the hospital, and she was out talking with me. And then at one point, when you were out of surgery, she pulled me back to where you were going to be. And so she's like, whatever you need, whatever. And so she walks me into the room, and there was like so many people in there, and they were running around your bed. They were rushing to they were connecting machines and adjusting your bed and your legs. And because you were not allowed to move your left leg, because that's where they went in for the surgery. And he was on just massive blood thinners at that point. So they were like, he can't move his leg. He will bleed out.
If I tear open that fresh scar or that fresh incision.
Yeah. So that added to
stress.
I was already amped up.
Do you remember, was the pump sitting just outside my leg? Because it was...
No, it was internal. It was an internal pump.
It seems big to be fitting inside, but okay.
Yeah. And then, you were like, I gotta move my leg. And I was like, don't move your leg. Come on. It was... And they were all like, make sure he doesn't move his leg. And I was like, what am I supposed to do? He's like, at that point, you were in like 2.5-year-old, like, cognitive,
Like just toddler
like, you were
level.
just like, this scratches and this hurts and this, like, and so you were like, there was no way I was going to keep you from moving there. So they ended up putting a brace on your leg to prevent you from moving around to open up that wound. And I was, I was
freaking out.
yeah. I mean, I'm good in a crisis. I keep it calm. In a crisis, I can keep it together. But I was
only for so long.
Internally not doing well, and so it took like a dozen people to stabilize him. Those were the words they were using. We need to stabilize him.
You mean hold me down?
Well, also to make sure your heart kept pumping. Like that was the other thing. Like they kept using the words, "We got to stabilize him," and I was like, I didn't realize we were here. Like we were at this like danger zone. And so we were there for a little while, and then the cardiologist pulled me out to tell me what he had done, which is 2 stents, and 3 locations, which is, we learned that later. But he said, I want to transfer him to the Anschutz cardiac ICU. And I wasn't excited about that. They were talking about airlifting him there, and then
it's the same metro area, but it's just
right. So we're in Arvada. Highlands Ranch is to the south, and Anschutz is to the far like northeast. So we were traveling a lot in that day. They talked about airlifting him. They ended up doing a critical care ambulance, which was 3 guys, I think. And it's a very expensive ambulance, but this is, I don't think, a couple hours that they were prepping you to be moved. And I was like, what do I don't want him to be moved. If it took 12 people to stabilize him, like, I don't want him to be moved, really. But the doctor said, with a specific cardiac ICU, something just came up on your phone there. Okay. Anyway.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay. And so the ambulance guys came in, and they could tell I was pretty scared about this. And they were like, listen, we've done this for a long time. He's like, I've done this for 7 years. My buddy over here has done it for 11 years. Like, we know what we're doing, and we'll get him there safely. He's like, right now, you need to go home, get yourself some food, pack a bag for the hospital, like, do a quick run home and take care of yourself. And so I did. I let you know what I was doing, but I think you were out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next thing I remember is arriving at the third place, the Anschutz one. A very vague, weak memory of like opening the ambulance transport doors and moving me, and I like see the hospital doors, and it was cold. That's all I remember.
Yeah, it was still a snowy. It wasn't snowing by then. It was still pretty cold though that night.
Post blizzard.
So this was almost 24 hours. Then he ended up at Anschutz at 10:30 or 11 at night. So almost 24 hours. In my time that I came home and I packed a bag. I fed the cat, and our friends Sue and Tracy met me at the house with some fast food. Yeah, they were like, what do you need? And I was like, I haven't eaten all day. They brought me some Culvers. I took a few minutes to eat and kind of tell them what had happened throughout the day. And so...
All right, so they came here and...
Yeah, they met me here. And then I went to Anschutz. I got there just about midnight. And they let me through. And they told me where to go. I went up to the 3rd floor, which is where the cardiac ICU is, and found his room. And the nurses there that night, Rachel with the blonde hair, don't know your last name, wish we did, but you were amazing. She came in and she was answering questions for me, answering questions for Tony when Tony was alert enough to ask questions. And so it was just, I don't think I slept that night.
So
yeah.
I made it. So we're at a third hospital now. Made it through the surgery. I'm going to pause and adjust the camera.
Okay.
So stay tuned. Be right back.